Okay, welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Susana Di Trollo. I am the Executive Secretary of the Kirchhead Network, and today I will have the pleasure of moderating this inaugural webinar of the new task force on formation and mission integration that Pep, Maria, and I have the honor to chair. This webinar is part of one of the projects of the task force that is called Best Practices in Jesuit Higher Education. During the last 4 years, we have been collecting, systematizing, distributing, and also discussing good practices in our institution on major topics for the identity and mission of our university. We just published 2 weeks ago two issues of the best practices on formation and mission integration. So this is the inaugural webinar for that issue of the best practices. In the following weeks, we are going to have also webinar with the author. We collected 26 best practices on formation programs around our university, either for faculty, students, and staff, and also program run by a Jesuit network around the world. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you to Germán Muñoz and Elena Lozano. Germán Muñoz working for the AAJU and Elena Lozano working for the Kirche Network. And also, of course, to Pep Maria for organizing this webinar. We are going to have a 90 minutes conversation, global conversation on this major and the most important topic for our institution worldwide. We titled the webinar Living Mission, what makes a university truly Jesuit in today, in the different contexts that our university are located, but what made our institution truly Jesuit. We are going to have 5 very distinguished speakers talking to us on 2 different rounds today. And then at the end, we are going to have some time for question and answer. So please write your question on the chat or wait until the end that you can present your question to the panel. We're going to have a very brief prayer led by Pep Maria, and then we are going to have to listen to the remarks from Father Joseph Christie, who doesn't need too much for the introduction. Father Joseph Christie is the Secretary for Higher Education of the Society of Jesus and also the President of the AAJU. So I will give the floor to Pep Maria for the prayer.
Thank you, Susana. Let me share the screen. So here's a text from Henry Nouwen. Fruits that grow in vulnerability. There's a great difference between successfulness and fruitfulness. Success comes from strength, control, and respectability. A successful person has the energy to create something, to keep control over its development, and to make it available in large quantities. Success brings many rewards and often fame. Fruits, however, come from weakness and vulnerability. And fruits are unique. A child is the fruit conceived in vulnerability. Community is the fruit born through shared brokenness. And intimacy is the fruit that grows through touching one another's wounds. Let's remind one another that what brings us true joy is not successfulness, but fruitfulness. My comment is that in certain contexts, like the family or a Christian community, fruitfulness is the most important value. However, normally in our institutions, and particularly universities, we need to combine fruitfulness and success. This combination requires a sound spiritual experience and the capacity to discern, both individually and in common. Let's have a moment of silence. So let us ask the Holy Spirit who came to the church yesterday in Pentecost to fill our hearts during this time of seminar, so that we may inspire our universities to take steps further in fruitfulness and success. In the Jesuit jargon, maybe in cura personalis and in cura apostolica ad maiorem Dei gloria. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you, Pep. Go ahead, Christie, with your remarks.
Good morning, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar organized by the Task Force on Mission Formation and Integration of IAJU. I'm here to welcome you on behalf of IAJU. IAJU is the largest global higher education network in the world, with more than 175 institutions in more than 50 countries worldwide, serving more than 800,000 students. A pretty large responsibility. The main challenge we face today in higher education is the Jesuit identity of our institutions. How to embody the Ignatian vision for education in our higher education institutions today. What makes it unique? What is special about a Jesuit education that characterizes our way of responding to the needs and challenges of today? Father Arturo Sosa General used to say, the identity of a Jesuit university does not correlate directly with how many Jesuits work there. Rather, it is about sharing the spirit that moves in a university, its common culture, and unity in a shared mission. There are many reasons are attributed to this problem of identity. Decline in the number of Jesuits in teaching and administration in our universities. A student during the course of his study for 3 or 4 years may not have a chance to interact or to meet a Jesuit during his or her stay in the university. Second one is a pluralism and increasing secularization in the world, which also has impact on higher education. Many our universities, Jesuit universities, were founded with a strong Catholic and Jesuit mission. But over time, they became more academically and culturally secular. Faculty, staff, students, and administrators come from multi-religious or non-religious backgrounds, which enriches diversity but can dilute a shared Jesuit ethos. Until the suppression All the Jesuit universities follow the guidelines given in the document Ratio Studiorum. It laid out clearly the curriculum structure, teaching methods, role of teachers, administrators, and students, subjects to be taught, etc., etc. Whether you study in Rome or in India or in Macau, it will be the same. It makes it easier to promote the Jesuit identity of our missions. After the restoration of the society, they tried to rework the document but could not succeed due to the focus on adaptation to different cultures. In addition, each country has its own regulations, and in some countries, we may not have the freedom to focus on Catholic and Jesuit identity. Also, the pressure on accreditation and rankings make us diverse to different ideas. In fact, we focused on this topic during the last two assemblies held in Boston and in Bogota. So this is an important topic, and we have been searching for it, searching what to do for a long time. A special task force, as Susanna said, has been appointed to help the institutions arrive at a clarity on this question and train our faculty, staff, and students. The task force led by Susanna and Pep Maria, they're involved in various activities: creation of repository of resources for mission formation, bringing together all the documents, training materials, videos, etc. Organization of a conference. Actually, they plan to do it next June at Ateneo de Manila. Periodic publications of the best practices in this area, and organization of webinars like this. Today's webinar will again focus on this million-dollar question. What makes a higher education institution truly a Jesuit? We have highly competent and experienced persons on the panel from different socio-cultural, religious backgrounds: India, the Philippines, Germany, Rome, etc. So a warm welcome to all of you for being with us, and a special welcome to the panelists. So we look forward to listening to you. Before I conclude, I'd like to extend my profound gratitude to Susanna and Pep Maria for the wonderful job they have been doing it. Thank you, Susanna. Thank you, Pep. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Christie. So let's start with the first panelist. We are going to reflect on the first question: what are the essential characteristic information, research, and governance? For that panel, we are going to listen first to Father Joseph Maria Serrano, Pep Maria, who are going to talk about the issue of formation. Pep is a Jesuit and a professor at the Pontifical Gregorian University, as well as an assistant to the Father Joseph Christie, IAJU. He has a very extensive background on economics and theology, and that make his work an intersection between social analysis and spirituality, and also, of course, mission. Second, we are going to listen to Dr. Barbara Chehama. I hope, Barbara, that I passed the test of pronouncing your German last name, who is a professor at the Munich School of Philosophy in Germany. He is also the director of the Munich Center for Social and Development Studies. Barbara holds a PhD on philosophy and extends teaching experience as well as a research experience at Munich School of Philosophy. And finally, for this first round, we are going to have the privilege of listening to Father Roberto Yap, who is the president of Ateneo de Manila, as well as the president of the Jesuit Association of University in Asia Pacific. Father Roberto Yap has an extensive and impressive background, so I will not have too much time to introduce him, but he has a background in economics and environmental research and brings an extensive leadership experience at the service of Jesuit education in Asia. So I give the floor to Pep Maria.
Thank you. Problem two. If Herman, can you share the slides? I have.
Absolutely. Just give me a second. Here we go.
Coming.
Pep, please remember that you have 12 minutes for your presentation.
We lose Pep?
Pep, are you there?
I think we lost him, Susana. Maybe we could
Okay.
move to someone else and
Yeah,
let
okay.
Pep come back.
Barbara, could you please then start with your presentation on research?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
I didn't have a presentation, so this helps maybe not to kick me out. Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really thrilled that we have this task force now to deepen our joint understanding and also draw out differences that may be very fruitful for all of us. So I have the honor to speak about research. And Susanna already mentioned that I serve as the director of our so-called Third Mission Institute for Social and Development Studies. What is a third mission? A third mission means the third task of a university besides teaching and research. In narrower sense, it is a special task that also involves the society to have a transformative impact with what we do in our universities. And I would like to speak from this third position as I see it as an important trademark of Jesuit universities. And from here, I would like to highlight three aspects of my understanding of research in this perspective that also guide our work. The first aspect is that research should be critical. The second is it should be transformative. And the third, it pays special attention to the margins. All these three aspects go hand in hand, and I will look at them one by one. Beginning with research is critical. With critical, I don't mean to criticize or pointing out what is negative or wrong. Critical here means what the word entails in its original meaning, to carefully judge or discern. Critical research thus aims at examining assumptions, engaging opposing viewpoints, distinguishing options, and testing evidence from several perspectives, which involve reason and faith, academic rigor, and human experience. Critical research also pays special attention to the context and structural as well as the systemic dynamics. Currently at my research chair, we involve ourselves in what is called critical phenomenology, an emerging trend in phenomenology that examines lived experiences while analyzing the social and historical forces that shape it. Critical phenomenology resists purely abstract or detached analysis. Knowledge is regarded as incomplete if it ignores the realities people actually face. Becoming critical in that sense entails an ongoing process of self-reflection and discernment to gain critical distance. Philosophy in the Jesuit tradition offers a number of exercises that help to practice what phenomenology calls epoché, which means to bracket the preconceived notions and implicit biases of our natural attitude in order to give room for something, the object, to show itself. Second, research should be transformative. Whenever we talk about transformative research at my institute, we often hear that all research is transformative. What's the point? While this may be true, transformative research questions from the outset why we engage in research and asks what we do research for and who benefits from it. In other words, in transformative research, the transformative intent is embedded from the very beginning. Also questioning the often proposed neutrality of research. In that way, transformative also entails the awareness that we as researchers transform in the process as we are involved with our entire being. Transformative research not merely aims at academic excellence and writing books or publishing in high-ranking journals for only a small crowd of experts or for our own career. Rather, it is justice-oriented, which means that it seeks to contribute toward social justice, human rights, ecological responsibility, peace building, or the common good. I very much like the introduction that our research, that's how I see it, should be fruitful and successful. This does not mean that some kind of activism replaces scholarship. Our academic work should keep its critical distance. It transforms through discernment and the opening of new perspectives. It is conscious of its social implications and thus continuously assesses the normative direction of what ought to be transformed and how. Who sets the agenda? Who defines the objectives? And who chooses the methods? Which brings me to my last point. Research pays special attention to the margins. I saw that Peter Ballais is here, and a few years ago I developed together with the team from JWL, Jesuit Worldwide Learning, a research model we called transformative research from the margins, particularly highlighting and following what the from means here. From critically assesses what is usually called participatory. It builds on what the apostolic preferences calls journeying with the excluded. Instead of researching them to death, as indigenous people sometimes describe their situation, with researchers invading their life worlds, often calling it participatory. This is something I have experienced with my work in Northern Canada. Research from the margins radically starts with what Lisbeth Lipari called listening otherwise. It is not only aiming at a dialogical approach following Martin Buber, but also considers the inherent asymmetricality of relationships that Emmanuel Levinas draws out. That means listening to what the people we do the research with consider as important in their context. What questions should be raised to start with? What needs to be answered to transform the situation? What methods are culturally sensitive and most promising in that context? How, for example, in what format should the research findings be disseminated? This coming from the margins, coming from otherness, is of course very challenging in many ways, as it follows different notions of what mainstream academia stands for. For example, we practice storytelling with indigenous people, or role-playing in Iraq, or we used easy language with people with intellectual disabilities. What I found most promising in these rather uncomfortable situations sometimes is collaborative efforts, working together interculturally and interdisciplinary, because this widens the pool of research methods and helps to uncover blind spots. Here, I think we are privileged as Jesuit universities, as we are part of a vibrant IAJU, and I'm grateful for being part of it. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for such an enlightening presentation. So now we have Pep Maria that we can go back to the topic of what are the major characteristic information that make a university truly Jesuit. Go ahead, Pep. We cannot hear you, Pep.
Okay, yes, now can you hear? Great. So I have formulated the headline for this speech in terms of accompanying the vocation of students. Okay? This is that Jesuit, we say that Jesuit education is holistic, which means that it tries to educate the whole person, not just the mind or the ideas or the contents. And the Jesuit tradition in pedagogy speaks about educate in the 4 C's. This kind of holistic means competent, conscious, compassionate, and committed. But this, apart from holistic, it's a personal education. We speak about cura personalis, and they have, I think that one way to recognize that everyone is unique and that we have to accompany this uniqueness. One of the words coming from the Christian tradition is vocation. So how we can accompany the vocation of our students. What is vocation? Definition: unique and personal way for everyone to approach and respond to each situation in which they feel immersed by combining their personal skills or combining their forces. So each person is a unique combination of the forces that needs to respond to perceive and respond to any situation in which they are immersed. For Christians, vocation is a personal gift, invitation by God that requires a personal acquaintance or response. Now, we think that higher education is a crucial time for students to discover their vocation and gain skills to update this vocation in their adult life. And also, therefore, Jesuit education, Jesuit universities can accompany students' vocation, but they can only accompany students' vocations if every, let's say, educator or faculty staff leaves their university engagement and as update of their own vocation. And if, also second condition, if the whole university becomes a community that accompanies vocations, mainly of students, but also of educators. Now, when we hear vocation, sometimes the reaction can be, what happens, no? Because vocation is a word coming from the Christian tradition, And what if our university content is secular or non-Christian, as Father Christie has suggested in his introduction? So first answer, vocation is a term that is used in secular universities and in debates about professional life. So don't feel afraid, because it has become a scholar term. Second, as Juliet says she says that which we call a rose, by another word, any other word, would smell as sweet. So words might not be so important. And my suggestion is, let's use vocation, or let's use purpose, or let's use quality biography, depending not on our choice, but depending on the audience. Because when the fourth gospel speaks about Jesus as a good shepherd, he says that the good shepherd calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. So the shepherd speaks the language of the sheep, not his own language, in order to call the sheep. Okay. But in any case, what is essential is not the language, but the smell of the rose, or in other words, to live our commitment in the university inspired by our vocation and by the Spirit of Jesus, who as a good shepherd gives his life for the sheep, who lives in joy, etc. Now, how to accompany these vocations? The Ignatian pedagogy provides clues to inspire different practices of accompaniment based on a document, Characteristics of Jesuit Education, published in 1993, which speaks about three kind of stages or three questions that we need to ask ourselves or to ask others to reflect on our own or their own vocation. On occasion of any event that someone has witnessed, the first question is asking about experience, what has happened, then asking and inviting people to reflection, what have you learned, and finally inviting people to action. What do you feel called to do now? This kind of pedagogy is not about sermons, about I'll tell you what you have to do. It's about practices focused on sharing these three questions, kind of a way to make an examen of experiences. So asking students or colleagues questions, and then humbly sharing with them my answers to those questions. Now, I'd like to introduce briefly this method to different levels of accompaniment in a Jesuit university. I suggest examples for a professor who's teaching a course, for practices for deans and directors at the level of an academic program, and finally to it's suggestions to directors or directors of presidents of universities. So the example for professors, imagine that you are a professor of marketing and you are evaluating a credit that you have just taught. So you can invite the students to redact a final survey in which they have to, you can invite them to answer the following questions. What have you learned about marketing? What are the values or anti-values involved in the theories and strategies of marketing that you have learned? How has this course enriched your understanding of professional life of a marketer? And finally, in the future, if you have to apply this knowledge in a company, what are the difficulties you will find. We move to the level of program directors. I want to share a series of courses that I taught and designed together with professors of ESADE, which were called the capstone courses. That could be kind of secular version of retreats, but they have the format of courses. These are courses at the end of each term where the subject is not a subject, an academic subject, but the student and their vocation, in which you ask questions, we ask them questions about experience, reflection, and action of the last term. What have you experienced? What meaning are you giving to what you have experienced? And what kind of actions are you called to perform in the next academic term? These kind of courses provide spirituality tools to ask oneself questions about their vocation and purpose. For instance, meditation, examen, repetition of discernment. So that the student, even when they have finished the program in our university, they are equipped with these spiritual tools to update their vocation every time that they come to a crossroads in their professional and vital life. The approach of every capstone at the end of each term should be linked to decisions that the student has to make in the immediate future. For instance, if between the second and the third year they have to go to exchange at the end in the capstone of the second year, one of the questions should be, how are you going to choose your exchange university? And finally, so the final capstone would be a wrap-up of the whole program and degree, if possibly the longer, and to make reflect about the whole program they are finishing. And finally, so some ideas about directors of presidents, because this idea about focusing on accompanying the vocation of the students involves the whole institution and has therefore implications for university management. So ideas, directors, presidents should assess the operations of the university from a financial perspective, certainly, from a human resources perspective, from a research perspective, from a social justice perspective, as Barbara was suggesting, but also from the perspective of the student's journey towards their vocation. Okay? And this last perspective would be a way to involve directors and presidents. It should be like ensure that each unit of the university, either academic or back office, could respond to certain questions. In which moment of the student's journey is my unit contributing, is each unit contributing to the vocation of the students? How is each unit collaborating with other units in order to better accompany students? And how is the university helping the members of every unit, who are all of them faculty and staff educator, to reflect on their own vocation in this university? Because either the educators reflect on their own vocation, or they will not be equipped to accompany the vocation of the students. Now, let me finish. After having provided presidents and directors of universities with my advice, let me remember this simple idea that a friend of mine, maybe a friend of yours, Luis Magrañán, who was provincial of my province, before I was leaving for university, and he was living to manage, he would remember me. Pep, remember that those who know how to do things, do them. But those who don't know, explain them. So have a good journey in the university. So this is my contribution. A text for further reflection you will find in an article that Professor and Father Alberto Núñez and I developed lately. You can find it in this link. And here's my email in case you wanted to contact me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pep. We'll also add to your last word that those that doesn't know how to do it, they plan. I mean, they consult people on how to do it. They become consultant, you know. Thank you, Pep. Okay, now is the turn of dear Father Roberto Yap. Father Roberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's evening here in Manila. So I'm very glad, I'm very pleased to be invited to this webinar and to try to share something on governance. I always say that this question that we have is what makes a university genuinely Jesuit, is the question that keeps Jesuit university presidents awake at night. I think it's an important thing that we always have to reflect on and think about as we do our work. And I think the answer to that is that what makes the University Genuinely Jesuit, what makes it different from other universities, is really because the Jesuit University tries to carry out Jesuit mission, which is a mission, as many times has been explained a lot, reconciliation with justice. I'd like to share on governance in particular on 3 points. One is structure of the university and how where I think Jesuit universities can really show a different, distinct structure. Second would be a method of governance, and I'll try to share things about something that we've been promoting the past few years, spiritual conversations, and then see that as a method of governing in the university. And third, something that's also been touched about is that the university must always be reaching out to the margins. So the first one, in terms of structure, what makes us different? Well, we're not different in the sense we're like other universities. We try to provide instruction and learning. So there's certainly an academic part to that. We're a university, so we also try to engage in research. And we set up structures also to do that. We have a vice president for research, an office that tries to coordinate research. Of course, the first one with instruction and learning, that's the usual structure. You have deans and departments and faculty. Then there's a third aspect that I think most universities in the world will recognize is really, they call it many ways, outreach, engagement. It's not only just universities who do that. I think in general, all the universities will say yes, that is a function. We try to help in nation building. We try to contribute to outreach and help communities and try to work for the common good. So in some sense, if I'd like to add that I think that Jesuit universities needs to have a structure also for a fourth pillar or a fourth function that we must have, and that is what Father Peps talk about, which is really formation. I think a Jesuit university should really almost put side by side, beside instruction, beside research, beside community engagement, a structure for formation. And for example, at the Manila, that's what we tried to do. We really created a vice president also for what we call mission integration. I notice also in other universities, in other countries also, there are offices for mission and identity, mission and ministry. And I think that's very Jesuit, that aside from instruction, teaching, and learning, you have this office or a cluster, very high. You even put a vice president there that will look after formation. And for that, you'd really involve there. You have a structure that supervises campus ministry, guidance and counseling, even placement, alumni affairs, and all the other aspects that are there that really try to formally contribute to formation. And this is also the cluster, as we call it here in the Philippines, that tries to really give seminars on Jesuit educational mission, Jesuit educational principle, Ignatian educational principles. We like have an Ignatian seminar for Ignatian seminar on Ignatian spirituality for education, which we ask almost all our faculty and staff to go through at some point in their career in the university. We have programs like for those who have taken that and are much more interested. We have like a 6-month course on formation for formators, special training that we give that involves learning the spiritual exercises, learning about Ignatian principles, and even community building among themselves. So um, my thought is that I think for a Jesuit university, you do have to give special attention to formation in the very structures of the university, that to make yourself really a genuine Jesuit university, not only instruction, not only research, not even just outreach, which is also important for a Jesuit university, but also in terms of the formation that we give and really put a high premium on that. We face concrete issues. For example, at the Manila, we tried to get accreditation from ASEAN University Network, which is a network that tries to look at the quality assurance of universities in Southeast Asia. And I remember they come here when we had the institutional accreditation. The lead accreditor was really pushing to tell us that our core curriculum, the general curriculum that we have, it's really large, because we ask all our students, regardless of their major, regardless of what course they're taking, to take the courses in philosophy, in theology, in literature, in history, this liberal humanistic curriculum that we have, which is really part of the core. And we ask everybody to do that, all the students. And this person who came from Singapore was saying, it's too big, it's too many. You need to lessen it, because so that you can teach these new things of data science and AI and more technology-driven courses. And so it's a long discussion that we've had with them. And in fact, for the accreditation, because he wanted to prove the point, he said, we want you to invite your employers to come, because he expected them to say that, yes, Ateneo, this Jesuit university teaches too much of these liberal arts and we need more highly technical skills. To his surprise, I think most of our employers actually said, no, in fact, we like the Ateneo graduates precisely because they have critical thinking, they're able to communicate well, they have compassion, they have empathy, things that we try to develop in the core curriculum that we have. And it's the same thing. We're very regulated in the Philippines. Our commission education is also trying to push to lessen the core curriculum that we have, the liberal humanistic curriculum. But again, it's part of the Jesuit mission to say no. Curriculum carries the mission, and part of the mission is really this liberal humanistic curriculum, again, very related to cura personalis, caring for the whole person. So that's my first part. I think Jesuit University needs also to expand or add at least a whole structure that specifically looks at formation. My second point is really about method of governance, and I think a particular method that's becoming really relevant is really, especially in the past 2-3 years, is really the spiritual conversations. It's being promoted a lot by the society. We use spiritual conversations, very related to the synodality process of Pope Francis promoted. And so we've been trying to see how we can use spiritual conversations in the very act of governance. How the decisions we make for the policies, the programs that we decide for the university. We have tried it since one way or the other. And I think the lessons I've learned from it is one, like in any discernment in the spiritual exercises, the key thing is really to focus the question that you are addressing here. And it's very clear that you don't use spiritual conversations for every single administrative decision, every single administrative policy you make. It must be really an important, crucial policy decision that must be made, a strategic direction that must be reflected on and thought about. So again, the choice of the question is very important if you want to apply spiritual conversations. Then also learning from the process of discernment, from the exercises. Prayer is very important. You can't just bring anybody into the conversation, the spiritual conversation, unless people are praying about the question and praying together. Also very important, I think, in any discernment, in spiritual conversations included, is really that the people must have some level of indifference. And that's very difficult individually, but as a group, to try to use it as a method of governance, it's still very important that the participants have this level of indifference in the thing. And then really the whole process is really, again, a lot of listening to each other, a lot of praying together, listening to each other, and really trying to sense where is the Spirit leading the university as it comes out in the spiritual conversations. In the end, actually, it doesn't really, it's not a sort of a democratic process where every vote is there. No, it still respects the decision process of the university. At some point, it's the president's council, it's the president, or it's the board of trustees that decide. But everybody going through that process, and the important thing is really using the process as listening to each other and trying to see where the Spirit is leading us. We have tried it several times in Ateneo with different groups, with even our trustees, with some of our deans, some of our vice presidents. The first reaction usually is sort of they're really puzzled by the whole thing. They're not used to it. They're most usually to the strategic planning process, etc. But somehow you get through it, and it's been a very meaningful experience. Precisely though for those three characteristics: focus the question, there's some indifference, there's a lot of listening. Finally, I'd just like to say that part of governance is really what Barbara already mentioned, that it's the UAP of walking with the poor and the excluded. I think the Jesuit University must really walk with the poor and the excluded, and to focus that the governance includes really establishing programs, policies, giving incentives for students. I always liked Father Peter Hans Kollenbach's statement that contact is more important than concept. So you have to give them those experiences where they are in contact with the poor, to immersion, to service learning program. Mentioned already, of course, is research. If you're working for rankings, there's a lot of pressure to have as many Scopus index articles. But really, if you have to do research that really affect and impact the lives of the poor. And that would be a hallmark of a Jesuit university. And then for us, where we're very tuition-based in the Philippines, in Ateneo, we don't have government subsidy for our students. We always struggle with how we can make the Ateneo, the Jesuit education, be more accessible to the poor. That's a real struggle for us. Thank you. So these are my thoughts about governance in a Jesuit university. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Father Roberto. So now let's move to the second round. We are going to discuss with two panelists the issue of the lesson learned information across the globe. We are going first to listen to Joe DeFeo, Vice President for Mission Leadership and Formation Program at the Association of Jesuit College and University in North America. Joe holds a PhD from Fordham University on educational leadership, and he has a long experience in supporting mission formation across Jesuit institutions and accompanying educators in the nation journey, and also have been a wonderful collaborator of the best practices in Jesuit Higher Education. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Susanna. So good to be with you, and good morning, everyone from here in Connecticut in the United States. And thank you to the previous speakers. You've covered a lot of areas for us to certainly continue to think about how we can continue to make our institutions more uniquely Jesuit in a variety of ways. And I'm always grateful to continue to learn from you. I was asked to speak about some of the formation practices that have been, most useful, some that have not worked and why, and which lessons might be transferable across contexts. We could spend an awful lot of time on any of those, so I'll try to be brief in some of the comments. The first thing before I forget is I want to share with you in the chat a recent AJCU formation program compendium that we just completed recently, which is available. It's a listing of various from the AJCU Northwest, the various formation programs that happen in our various schools. They've offered those, and you can search them, take them, download them, things like that if they're helpful for your institution, and they're categorized in a whole bunch of ways. So hopefully that's helpful to you. As I thought about the programs overall, from a national perspective, we have a few programs. We have one that is for folks that are just beginning or new or emerging into Jesuit higher ed, and it kind of lays the foundation. It's called our Ignatian Leadership Seminar, and there's an article by Jean Lord and her colleagues in the latest issue of Best Practices about that. There's the Ignatian Colleagues Program, which is kind of a deep dive of learning about the Jesuit Catholic mission and learning to be what we call discerning leaders. That's the one I've been the director of for the past 12 years or so. And that's about 18 months, and that's probably the most inclusive, engaged program that we offer. There's a recent one the last couple of years called the Ignatian Executive Leadership Academy, and as we heard our previous speakers talking about, how do we engage folks to get them ready for senior leadership, executive leadership, whether it's a presidency or a provost or a senior academic officer, things like that. And we've recently tried one for new presidents. We've had a lot of transition here in the United States of new presidents. And so AJCU is trying to bring together some ideas that would be helpful to new presidents to help them think and as their work as the director of the work from a mission lens and how that might be helpful to them. One we had done for a few years was called the Trustee Forum, where we invited trustees from all the Jesuit schools to come, and we had a series of those. That was one that we did for a little while, and while it was valuable to the people who attended, the presidents felt that they could do that. Those relationships were so personal that they had chose to do that on their own. So we're going to discontinue that program for a while, but presidents want to continue to cultivate their own mission relationship with their trustees in a variety of ways. I should say that each of our schools does an awful lot of their own programming, and in terms of helping folks learn about mission from a variety of contexts, whether they're seminars or webinars or in-person events and things like that. And there really is an awful lot of great work going on here. From the national point of view, we try to offer things that would benefit the local institution or do things that perhaps they are not able to do. And I think one of the benefits of the program, some things we've learned about, is that when we provide the time and space, as you've heard in some of the conversations here, as well as in some really wonderful articles that are in the best practice. Susanna, you could just read Susanna's and you're going to hear basically a lot of what I'm going to reiterate, is the difference between formation and information. I think there's a tension there, and with the presidents and the leaders in the US with so much pressure on being cost effective and the need and so much transition happening, the amount of presidents, provosts, and mission officers that have cycled through in the last 5 or 6 years of our schools is really quite stunning. And so the idea of how do we do more for less? How do we make it cost effective? Can't we just take these workshops and scale them up? All very good ideas. How do we get quick resources, videos, whatever it might be, is certainly an interest. But the challenge is the difference between that and what formation is, and that it requires time, time with colleagues, time alone. And that's hard to make a case for when time is not the enemy, but it's a real hard thing to do because people are moving through so quickly at our schools. One of the other pieces that I think we've heard is that making our language accessible is so key. We have our Jesuit, Latin phrases and jargon that we use, and folks who have been in this world for a while understand that. But how do you translate that to people who are coming from either different faith or no faith backgrounds, from the public sector into the Catholic Jesuit higher educational world? People who just have a wide variety of experiences, as you all know, and we've heard some of that about how do you translate into your particular context. Here in the US, we have that same piece. So making that language accessible, I think, was another piece that is really, really helpful. I can't highlight enough when we're talking about formation that bringing in the personal life experiences of our leaders with their professional development, as opposed to trying to do that separately, I think is really what the heart of vocation is, and really what the heart of formation is about. And that's a different mind shift for so much of the way that higher education is geared in the US, especially. It's all about your credentials, your research, which is really incredibly important, and that's what people are asked to do. But in a Jesuit university, when we bring their personal experiences to bear on it, and we give them time to reflect on this, and we do it in a cohort or a community of belonging or meaning, that's where the difference seems to happen over time. So it's not just I take back one or two gifts from this particular workshop, but it starts to get embodied in the way people think, act, and engage, both formally and informally. And there's incredible opportunity there that I think programs that the ones we've had either in the US hope to foster that. I know I'm rattling off a whole bunch of things, at one time, but I'm just going to try to get a few more out to you. In one of our programs, Engaging Colleagues, we offer both an international encounter and what we call a Magis retreat, which is a 7-day silent retreat based on the spiritual exercises of Ignatius. And again, as you might imagine with retreat, making the language accessible, introducing people to this person, Jesus, right? However they might be coming to that experience, but giving them the gift of slowing down, of quieting down, and allowing the gifts of quiet to speak to them in new ways is incredibly new experience for so many of our leaders. One thing they don't seem to have is time, and here's a gift to do time. I think one of the biggest challenges facing us as a whole, not necessarily in a particular program, is we sometimes look at mission and formation as something we're supposed to do or have a responsibility to do. And even if we want to do it and offer it to folks, we don't always look at it as this is the gift of our charism that we have to share with the world. And there's usually a lot more joy and enthusiasm to invite and to share a gift with someone, as opposed to, hey, I need to ask you to do one more thing on your busy schedule. And I don't know if that's just a US tension or not, but I noticed that here, even with the best of intentions, we sometimes move from this is another thing, another time constraint, time commitment you're going to make, versus this is the biggest gift that we have to offer the world. And we do it so well with our students. Why don't we extend this as forcefully and as encouragingly as we might with our faculty and our senior leaders as we go forward? There's a lot of other pieces we have here, but the last thing I'd say about in terms of the national perspective is that our schools are so busy trying to do their best for their students and their faculty on their individual campuses, and they do a lot of formation on their campus as well. But it's hard to get many opportunities to form this sense of we as a network, so that our schools do this. And this is one thing that our programs do offer. It's a way for us to bring together faculty and administrators from all our different schools, not disciplinary based, but in a variety of ways. So they form a sense of community and a sense of meaning and purpose on a national scale. And certainly IAJU tries to do that. But it's a tension, how much energy and time and resources to put towards this piece. But I think it's going to be essential to our survival, or else we're just going to have a series of individual schools. But I think there's so much more richness that can be garnered from the sense of we as a whole, not only AJCU North America, but all our regions. And so I wonder if there's the last thing I'd ask is, might there be a way for us to further encourage this development of the sense of we as a whole? The question I was wondering as I was listening to our speakers was, has the society asked enough of us in some ways in this area of formation? They've been very inviting, as Ignatian spirituality is. very encouraging, as Ignatian spirituality is. But to continue to put that strong encouragement out there of formation and the sense of this is who we are, and we will be better at who we are by investing more in doing these type of things than we will if we don't do those. And so I'm going to leave kind of just question at that. I know time is short, but those are just some of the things I was wondering about as I was listening to some of the speakers. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Joe. So let's move to our last panelist, Father Praveen Smarty. He's the Vice Chancellor of St. Aloysius University in Mangalore, India. He has an academic training in chemistry. He actually holds a PhD in chemistry from University of Namur. Isabella, you may be very happy to listen about that. And he also has served in multiple leadership roles in Jesuit education in India, always with a strong commitment to integral human formation and service. So the floor is yours, Father Praveen.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. My video is not working, that's why I'm in another little video if you would like to see me there. But then I was very happy to be part of this wonderful webinar on formation, research, and governance. The speakers have already spoken on, and really we got the wonderful insights into how and what we could do in Jesuit education. Jesuit education, as we see in India also, there are different contexts. Father Christie already explained about the multi-religious and multicultural context that we are in India. How do we really work it out in the pluralistic context? I think that also makes sense to us. But then from the insight that I received just now about critical thinking, and also education is transformative in research, and also special attention to the poor and the marginalized, I think that becomes a trademark all over the world. Jesuit University explicitly rejects the idea of education as a tool for pure self-aggrandizement, personal wealth accumulation, or isolated careerism. We do not educate students so that they can build taller walls to separate themselves from the world's suffering. We educate them to build longer tables through solidarity and kinship. Solidarity and kinship means our students learn to work together for a common purpose that transcends their individual desires. They develop deep empathetic relationships with their surrounding communities. They share their unique talents and skills to lift others up, intentionally learning to walk with the marginalized rather than looking down at them from a position of privilege. This leads to the service rooted in justice and love. Jesuit education cultivates a sharp, critical awareness of social, economic, and personal structural evils. It does not merely offer superficial charity, it stresses the urgent importance of environmental and social justice. We remember the Laudato Si here about our own Jesuit became a Pope, Francis. It is designed to prepare students to become responsible, empathetic citizens who are deeply sensitive to the distinct needs of our time, whether that means fighting the climate change, or walking with the poor, or ethical AI governance, journeying with the youth, etc. In the current global education landscape, there is an aggressive push towards hyper specialization, as all of the speakers mentioned about AI and digitalization. Major institutions are defunding the humanities, cutting philosophy departments, and turning universities into narrow trade schools. A Jesuit institution stands as a bulwark against this trend. We understand that to face a volatile, uncertain world, students need an education that explores the rich intersection between faith and culture and embraces deep interfaith engagement and collaboration that we feel more so in India as we work among the multi-religious and multicultural communities. Our curriculum is designed to encourage critical, analytical, and creative approaches to solving complex, non-linear problems by exposing our business students to ethics an engineer to sociology, and a scientist to literature, we incorporate a truly global and international dimension into growth and learning. We prepare students for lifelong learning, ensuring that when the specific technologies of today become obsolete tomorrow, our graduates possess the agility of mind, the moral character, and the intellectual depth to pivot, adopt, and continue leading. We always say we are preparing our students not to make a living rather than make a life. I think that is what our Jesuit education is. The operational blueprint, I would bring it the Ignatian pedagogical paradigm. How do we actually operationalize these lofty values in a regular classroom? How do we ensure that this philosophy moves from the pages of our strategic plans into the hearts of our students? We do it through a practical, rigorous pedagogical framework issued by the International Commission on the Apostolate of Jesuit Education. The IPP, the Model Ignatian Pedagogical Paradigm, turns the classroom from a site of passive listening into an active looping cycle of 5 interconnected elements that shape how our faculty teach and how our students learn. First of all, the context. We begin not with the textbook, but with the human reality. That is where our context becomes very important. Educators must understand the learner's actual environment, their background, their emotional readiness, and their social context. We meet the students exactly where they are as humans. Second one is experience. Human experience is the starting point of Jesuit learning. Teachers create conditions that engage students as whole persons, utilizing memory, understanding, imagination, and feelings. We challenge them to gather and recollect what they already know, layer it with new information, and engage in real world experimentation so that their knowledge grows in completeness and truth. Thirdly, the reflection, I think many of us brought in very strongly along with discernment. This is a critical phase so often omitted in modern fast-paced education. We raise the question, how may learners become more reflective so as to more deeply understand what they have learned? In our education system, the outreach and service learning is mandatory. Through structured reflection, our students are taught to look at the relationships between different facets of human knowledge and analyze the deep ethical implications of what they are studying. This is where information transforms into genuine wisdom. And the action, because Jesuit education stresses an unyielding commitment to improve the condition of our world, reflection must never turn into passive navel gazing. Reflection must compel the learner to move beyond knowledge to action. Teachers provide distinct opportunities that challenge learners to choose courses of action based on truth, contributing directly to the global community through actions that are rooted firmly in justice, peace, and love. Finally, the evaluation of IPP. We evaluate, but in Ignatian pedagogy, evaluation goes far beyond standard testing, multiple choice exams, or checking for mere academic mastery. While academic excellence is strictly required, true evaluation encompasses the learner's well-rounded growth. That is where the holistic learning becomes very important as persons for others. So our motto is always to become men and women for and with others. Observant teachers look for signs of inner growth in classroom discussions, a shifting worldview, and a student's growing generosity in response to common human needs. In conclusion, our university is truly Jesuit when its foundational motto, Ad Majorem Dei Gloriam, for the greater glory of God, ceases to be just an architectural inscription or over our doorways. It becomes alive when the primary deliverable that we offer to the world is not just a degree certificate from a Jesuit institution, a resume, or a well-placed corporate asset. The ultimate output of a Jesuit university is a transformed human being, an agent of change. It is a graduate who walks across a graduation stage possessing a sharp, highly competent intellect, beautifully balanced by a deeply empathetic, unyielding conscience, and a lifelong commitment to change society and the world for the better. When our graduates step out into the world and begin to break down structures of systemic injustice, when they use their wealth and power to protect the vulnerable, when they pioneer sustainable models for our planet, and when they speak truth to power with courage and humility, I think is required more and more in today's context. That is when we know our mission is alive. That is what makes a university truly, authentically, and distinctively Jesuit. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share these values, and more so with collaboration. When we come together, we feel that we Jesuits all over the world having the similar kind of a tradition, that we could feel that we feeling and collaborate for the better society. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Praveen. Well, we have around 10, 11 minutes for questions, for very short questions. We can, receive two questions, no more, for the author. If you want to, either you can write it on the chat or present it by yourself. You raise your hand if you want to. A question? Comments? Benjamin, go ahead. Benjamin, did you raise your hand? No? I'm sorry. Barbara.
Maybe we can just all, exchange some thoughts around the biggest challenges that we face as Jesuit universities in today's world. Maybe unique challenges as Jesuit universities, I don't know. But I sense that from what I heard that there are some. Maybe somebody has an idea around that. If not, I can, go ahead.
You want the challenges besides what the identity of the Jesuits?
Yes.
Okay.
As universities in particular.
We have a lot of challenges.
Yes.
Okay.
There are so many challenges, but the thing is that as well as challenges, there are strategy, and we have the spirit, we have especially the spirit to try to put together common strategy to try to face all of these challenges. They are different across the globe, but they are also common. What is happening and going on with our youth is something that we share. And if you see any article or data about the well-being of the student that is also related to the identity and the spiritual health that we can offer in our institution, that is something that we can still put together. I believe that there is time, not right now, not to be ashamed of all of the challenges that Jesuit Higher Education have to face as any other institution of higher education around the world. We are called to run the extra mile, but we are also, as we listen from all of our speakers today, we have not the power, but we have the strength and a common identity that can bring all us together to collaborate in trying to face all of these challenges for the sake of the mission that is the most important, and for the sake of our students and our work. And that is part of our major responsibility. We cannot allow, as Joe pointing out, we have responsible for giving opportunity to our students and faculty and leaders in our university to get to know all of this spirituality and identity and values and nation values.
Susana, there's a question in the chat. Richard Kish.
Richard, go ahead. Do you want me to read the question, or you can present it by yourself? Richard says, why does it seem that Jesuit values become lost as a student becomes more distant from graduation? Societal pressures seem to overcome the values learned from a Jesuit education. Please read the question. So that will be a question, I mean, especially for you, Pep, about formation. How is
So what comes to my mind is that when you finish university, you finish a first moment of exchange with these students and connection with alumni is also important to keep their vocation alive, to help them upgrade this vocation that maybe they have discovered and made aware of during the years of the university. But so here, maybe the role is the role of the alumni associations, apart from the personal connections that may have appeared during the years of the university, because if students are not transforming society very much when they are studying in the university, but when they become professionals, it's the action is more intensive. And if they can be accompanied, or if they have created a friendship among them in their generation, this is the kind of network that can help them remember the values they discovered in the university and update them in their decisions during professional life.
Thank you, Pep. Dirk, can you please read your comment if you want?
Yes, I can do so. I think that the students are so different here in Western societies. So I'm a German. The sensitivity for issues are really fading away. So when I just learned that prayer in Manila is possible, that would not be an opportunity to do so here in Europe. And this challenges globing perspective for Jesuit identity for all universities on the globe.
Yeah, that's true. Victoria, Vicky, do you want to share your thought?
It was not the question. It was basically what I was saying was some universities are starting to allow their alumni to come back to campus and audit courses for free, some way keeping that Jesuit mission alive.
Thank you, Vicky. Any other question or comment? Okay, well, just 3 minutes before closing. I don't know if Christie, if you want to share some closing remarks, or you, Pep. On my side, I really want to thank everybody for this webinar, and invited you to both to read the best practices in Jesuit Higher Education and Formation, that you can read it on the IAJU website, and also to stay tuned for the news, for the upcoming webinars with the author, and hopefully for the Congress in Manila next year. So Christie, Pep, if you want to share something.
I just want to thank you, Susan and Pep, for arranging this. And one request to the panelists, whether they could put together their PPT or a paper, which could be uploaded in our website, which could be used by all people who couldn't afford to attend webinar today. So thank you very much for all the panelists. It was very inspiring and very learning experience.
Yeah. So finally, maybe announce more formally that our task force formation and mission integration will have a meeting, presential meeting in June, end of June 2027 in Ateneo de Manila. Thank you, Father Yap, and thank you, Ateneo de Manila. And we shall make the announcement so that you keep your slot in the agendas, and we think that this can be the beginning of this kind of global awareness that Joe DeFeo was saying. This we, the constitution of this we, that is the group of Jesuit universities, particularly for those who are in the identity and mission. So please start making savings, and keeping the room for your agenda.
Thank you, Pep. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to the speakers. Take care.
Thank you.